Nothing on the show is to be construed as legal advice. The contents of this show are for informational purposes only.
Hello and welcome to the Know Your Rights, the Consumer Law Cast with me, Abbas Kazerounian. We are super lucky today. We've got none other than Brian Chase. He is, for all our viewers and listeners who don't know him, literally one of the best lawyers out there, probably the godfather of products liability law, in all of the United States, not just California. I'm really, really honored that he's taken the time out to be on our podcast. And we have something in common that both of our firms are doing, the talc cases, which is really the topic of today's podcast. Though I do want to get Brian back just to talk about car products liability at some point, because he's got a bunch of books out on this and he's really literally the authority on the topic. But nonetheless, he's a phenomenal trial lawyer. And Brian, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, Abbas, thank you for having me on. I mean, thanks for the kind words about me, but I can say all of those things about you. You're an incredibly gifted and talented lawyer, and it's an honor to be doing this podcast with you today. Thank you for the invite. I appreciate it.
Of course, and thank you. And also, as a starting point, these talc cases, I'm sure a lot of people have seen commercials, advertisements out there. And, I see a lot of these kind of nasty comments about the attorneys that are representing these victims as like ambulance chasers and all of that. And I think it's more apt that you kind of respond to that a little bit as to the importance of these cases. But also for our viewers, like Brian is a former president of Consumer Attorneys of California, which is a statewide trial lawyers organization that really helps lobby, legislators in increasing rights for consumers. And I think with his experience, his leadership, in the trial bar and in his years of experience in assisting consumers, I really would like you to kind of, talk about how important these cases are and these allegations of ambulance chasing and all this kind of stuff is so far from the truth.
Yeah, no, these are incredibly serious cases, as I know you know. And when somebody starts, waving the ambulance chaser flag, I understand that on certain cases. There's always, a little bit of bad seed in every group. But these cases are so righteous. And just an example I like to talk to people about, especially non-lawyers about, is, and I know you already know this, talcum powder in your Johnson & Johnson container is 99+% just what they scoop out of the ground, okay? And then less than 1% is fragrance. So it's just mined from the ground and put in this container. Okay, well over 100 years ago, when they were mining this stuff and putting them in drums, 100 years ago, they were warning it was carcinogenic. Okay, so, lawyers weren't around, advertising this stuff 100 years ago when they were mining it and warning people then, again, 100 years ago plus, that this stuff is carcinogenic. And then we don't have to go back 100 years, and we can go back to the 70s and 80s when we're starting to get research and studies out of some of the big, research centers doing, testing and various work like that, and letting the public know this stuff is carcinogenic and this can really cause problems. So, when they were mining it a long time ago, they knew, but then we have since learned, over the decades, inside they knew, internally, Johnson & Johnson and others that use this stuff knew, and there are so many documents, as you know, proving that there's no frivolity or frivolous lawsuit stuff here. This is a dangerous product when used continually. If you use it one time, fine, it's probably like smoking one cigarette. You're not going to get cancer if you smoke one cigarette, but you smoke a couple packs a day for a while, you're going to increase your risk, and it's the same thing here. So these are very serious cases, and I've got clients dying, monthly.
Yeah, I mean, like this is not a simple fender bender. We're talking about people's mothers, people's sisters, people's grandmothers, and we're talking about ovarian cancer. I mean, we're talking about like people that are literally about to die or have died, and I can't really highlight what you've already said anymore, which is like these are really, really important cases. And what I think the evidence in especially the bellwether trials that have come out has showed that arguably, well, I would actually say unarguably, Johnson & Johnson knew about the dangers of the product and yet chose to continue selling it.
Yeah, there's no doubt. you see the size of the verdicts, and the general damage awards aren't huge. It's the punitive damage awards that are I mean, the verdicts are huge, but the punitive damages awards are huge. And they're winning, the vast majority of these cases. That just shows that with all of the documents that are out there and the information out there for the juries to want to punish like that. And you've seen the documents. Yeah. I've seen the document.
For sure.
And that's why they're having a hard time resolving these cases, because they keep losing them, and and they don't know what to do. It would cost them billions and billions more. I mean, I don't know what's above $1 billion.
Yeah, billion. Yeah,
get rid of.
Stop making up words.
Yeah, I could do my Austin Powers here. But the thing is, it's so tragic and it's really hard. And and those of us that do any kind of PI case, if you have a wrongful death case, you're meeting a family, but they've already lost a loved one. That's very emotional, but you're not there witnessing it. I tell you, about every 1 or 2 months, we have one of our clients, because we check in every 30 days with them, that they find out they've got 30 days to live. And then we all of a sudden have to go do an in extremis deposition. And so we have had through, in this litigation, to have to sit through a deposition of your client that they know they are dying. And to sit there and watch that, I mean, I'm getting goosebumps, right now talking about it. It is just the worst type of litigation as far as getting angry at the defendant, when you have to sit with the client and let them discuss life, knowing they're going to be gone in 30 days. It's just terrible.
I mean, what this really is about is corporate greed, where profits were put before life. And it really is reminiscent of the Ford Pinto cases. This is classically a scenario where you have a company that has actual knowledge that what they are selling is inherently dangerous to the people that they're selling it, their customer base, the people they should be loyal to. And yet they choose to ignore that for profitability. And if they get caught in the future, they'll pay the lawsuit. And that's why they're getting hit with the verdicts.
Yeah. And yeah, well, there's no doubt. And all they had to do, Johnson & Johnson makes cornstarch, does the same job and doesn't have the problem. But, baby, and they've marketed it brilliantly. If you think back, and I'm older than you, but when I was a kid in elementary school, the cigarette ads, 4 out of 5 doctors recommend Camel, really? And then people skiing, on the lifestyle. Well, that's how they well, think about talcum powder. Smooth enough for a baby's bottom, a dab a day, or all the different things that they say. It's kind of reminds me of the tobacco marketing.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think one thing that Johnson & Johnson kind of were so clever with the, as you mentioned, is that they kind of had built up a reputation that you can trust them and you can put, like, this is what you want to treat your baby with. So why wouldn't a grown woman want to use something that they put on their own baby? Like, it's that trust factor and that branding that had really, I think, assisted them to get the customer base that they did and why they became a household name. So you're absolutely right on that. And I think that's a really important part of the story, as you put it. So, if you're, a viewer or a listener right now, and you're, rightly shocked by what we're telling you, you probably want to know what you should be looking for. Brian, do you want to start about the criteria, or, what they want, or I'm happy to go as well, yes.
Well, I will invariably leave something out so we can do this together.
Absolutely.
But yeah, in general, the cases that you really want to look for is you want to find a client that is BRCA negative, so they don't have that predisposition to cancer.
Yeah.
So we start there. The other thing is we look for clients. The better cases are when someone has used it daily or more than daily, and also over time, because that's what it's all about. It's like when I said cigarette smoking a minute ago. One cigarette's not going to kill you.
Yeah.
Using baby powder one day is not going to kill you. So the kinds of cases we look for is people that have been using it daily or twice a day for 10, 20, 30 years. The more years you get out, the better off the research is on the statistical significance of getting cancer. So those are the two main things we look at. And I think there's a couple other criteria, and I'll throw those to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, For the period of time, Brian is absolutely right. The longer that the victims have been using it, the better. I think the minimum threshold that my firm kind of looks at is about 5 years, but obviously 10, 15, 20 is obviously going to be a much better case on the causation. And what I'm talking about there is, we have to be able to prove that, but for the victim having used the Johnson & Johnson baby powder, they would not have got the ovarian cancer in question. And so that causation issue is easier to prove the longer that it was used. And I think the BRCA test is essentially a genetic test. So we throw out these acronyms sometimes, and it's just so that the viewers understand that if one of the things you should be asking is does someone closely related to me, like the mother, have breast cancer or something like that, or your father's mother, for example. And then it's an easy test to get, and that will help determine that whether you are predisposed to it or not. And I think that's certainly, and of course all the law firms, the consumer lawyers that do these, will give a free consultation on this. So if you're confused about the criteria, feel free to call someone like Brian, myself, anybody that does this, and they'll be able to help you. So I think you kind of laid it out there, Brian. And what I really appreciated is the emphasis you put on the importance of these. Now, as far as where we are, without getting too much into the weeds, in the federal cases, which I'm more involved in, and I know you have leadership on the state cases in California. They brought the big Daubert motion. The judge bifurcated it in New Jersey, and for those that don't know what a Daubert motion is, it's where the defense attacks the science and tries to say that this is junk science, that we can never prove that it's the talc powder. And the judge in New Jersey issued almost an omnibus order, 152 pages, the analysis really, really in depth, of saying that it's not junk science, and the victims overcame that. And I think there's a lot of pressure on Johnson & Johnson now, and I really think the only thing that is stopping the settlement process is literally the exposure, as far as that's concerned. Why don't you give us an update of what's going on in the state cases?
Yeah, and I agree with what you say. There's just been so many large verdicts that they can't figure out how to settle. And God forbid this happens, but they need to defense half of them, and then they can come up with one. But I don't think they can because of how good the cases are. Anyway, so in California, we've had one trial. One, I want to commend you on the MDL work, because those were argued last year, and we didn't get the rulings until this year on the Daubert motions. Yeah. And it was shortly after that, J&J took the product off the market. I mean, they finally taken it off the market. So that's great stuff. Win, by the way.
And it's people like you, Brian, that's a massive win that Johnson & Johnson took one of their best-selling products for decades off the market because of the work that people like you are doing. So that's massive.
Yeah, no, that was a big step in the right direction for all of us. So in California, in the JCCP, we have had one trial. I don't think there's been an MDL trial yet. I know there's been a lot of St. Louis trials and whatnot. Yep. So as I know, there was the Echeverria trial in California, got a $417 million verdict. So it was just a monster verdict. Went up on appeal. It did get reversed. So that's the bad news. Yep. The good news is that the case is going to get retried and it survives. But the immediate status that people need to be aware of right now is in California, we have filed a fourth amended complaint. So we've got a new complaint that has brought in the asbestos allegations, because that wasn't involved in ours earlier on, and one other element that's escaping me right now. So if you've got a case right now, you need to, actually it's supposed to be done by September 21st, and I think we're at the 24th today. You were supposed to file a notice of adoption of the fourth amended complaint and then fill out the short form. So if anybody's watching this and hasn't done it, you need to get on that immediately. And if you're looking at these cases, newly, make sure you get a copy of the fourth amended complaint that you ultimately want to file, because it's the most new, up-to-date operative complaint that we have. The judge that was initially handling these cases has recused herself. I'm not quite sure why. We've got Judge Buckley now downtown on CCW, who's a great judge who's monitoring these things now. And we've got the status conference coming up. He's recently overruled J&J's demur, to that Fourth Amendment complaint, and so we're just getting ready to rock and roll and try to get it to trial dates.
That's amazing. And I think you touched on a really good point, which is the asbestos allegations. And so I just want the viewers to understand that ovarian cancer, though that's the most prominent thing that is happening to victims, is not the only thing that would potentially give you a case. Mesothelioma, for example, or fallopian tube cancer also are potential things that could have been brought about by the use of talcum powder. I think that's a very, very important point, and that was a very important and significant change in the pleadings or in the complaint that Brian just talked about, because it added that allegation, which means that if you do have mesothelioma from the asbestos, from the use of talc, that is also in play now. And so, Brian, talk me through it. If somebody is thinking, wow, my mom or my sister recently found out that they had ovarian cancer, and to my memory, they did use, Johnson & Johnson talcum powder, and they think that there's potentially there a case there. Is it too late to bring a case, or can they bring a case still? Just because the Fourth Amendment complaint has been filed.
Yeah, no, it's not too late. So there's still time to bring cases, and I encourage anybody that if they were affected or they have a loved one that was affected, even if that loved one has recently passed away, to reach out to someone like you, myself, or anybody else around the country that is doing these cases, so you do everything you can to protect your rights. Because depending on timing, as you know, you want to, with regard to the pathology, you got to preserve that. And as time goes by, those types of things might get spoliated, and you don't want to do that. But no, it's not too late to file cases now. We're still filing cases all the time, as I'm sure you are.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, listen, I know you're short on time, and I told you I will keep this quick, because Brian, everybody, it was in the middle of a mediation, and the poor guy took some time out to be on the podcast to talk about it. But it is an important issue, and I'm really happy that you were so gracious with your time. And if anybody wants to contact you, everybody knows where to contact me because it's website. But specifically, if you want to contact Brian Chase, literally one of the best lawyers I know, Brian, can they contact one of your attorneys, or is it an email address or something they can contact, and we'll put it up on the video for you?
Yeah, that would be great. So just my email address is B as in boy, bchase @bisnar, BISNAR, chase.com. And so if anybody has a question or anything that they want to ask of me, if they just email me directly, I'll answer it, and or have it go to my partner that works with me with these cases. So we'll make sure you get your questions answered.
That's the kind of guy you're dealing with, guys, because most big shot lawyers, and he is a big shot lawyer, that has a firm of his magnitude, would not give you his own personal email address. And there you have it. He's like, talk to me personally. That's how much the guy cares. So thank you so much, Brian. I honestly, I can't thank you enough for being so gracious with your time and always being such a good friend to me. Thank you so much.
You're one of my favorites, brother, and I know you know that. So it's my pleasure to be on this, and thank you for asking me.
Of course, thank you. Good luck with the mediation.
Okay, guys. Talk to you later.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you all again for tuning in and watching us and listening to us. Really appreciate you, and thanks again to Brian Chase for giving up his time. Until next time, keep it legal.